Okay, our program for today on music, in keeping with our theme, quality dancing, I think, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important parts of our square dancing movement and our square dancing usage today. Music can really set the theme of your dance. It can set the whole mood of your dance. And I think today, our program, the fellows we have working with us today are two very outstanding fellows in the square dance activity. One, Johnnie Wykoff, has been in the square dance activity for 32, 33 years. And he has a very knowledgeable background on music and the usage of it. And he's going to start our program. And then Carl Anderson from Stillwater, Oklahoma. And Carl is a school professor, and he has a degree in music. And I think you will enjoy the presentation that both these fellows have. So without any further ado, we're going to start here with our friend Johnnie Wykoff.
Thank you, Curley. I thought to open the first portion of this program, it might be interesting to take a look at the psychology of music. Now, you know you are affected a certain way by music, and in the same token, everyone around us is affected a certain way, and this becomes the psychology of it. Now, relating to the fact that we all are living organisms, we respond to certain things. So, just what is the subject matter of the psychology of music? We know that the psychology as the science of behavior deals with the response of an organism to things. These things we could and do call stimuli. For example, we select a piece of music to fit a certain mood. What type of music do you use to bring a crowd up to a certain peak or a high in an evening? What type of music would you use to bring the crowd back down gently so you may start to work again on another high? There are times we want a group to listen as well as dance and enjoy. There are times we want a group to listen with just a minimum amount of listening and a lot more dancing. And this can be done in the selection of music. I think if you take the time to experiment with different music, the end result of your dance program will be a much more pleasant one. Also, you will find after a time you'll be able to control and create a more satisfying program, not only to the dancers, but to yourself as well. So in other words, the type of stimulus we can create will be a psychological end that a dancer or dancers deliver to us in a response or responses. After we begin to use our minds in this direction, whether by trial or error, or by careful study, we will find psychological responses can be described in different ways. You might want to make note of these ways: discriminative, integrative, variable, modifiable, delayable, and inhibitive, and sometimes even of a cultural nature. Now, how do these characteristics fit the musical response? Well, we as callers are expected to be able to distinguish good from poor in a composition, proficient from mediocre. So, indeed, musical responses are very discriminative in that line. For example, we start with a record, and we add a little choreography along with our voice, and we have the integrity or wholeness aspect of the musical action. So we've covered two of those categories. The musical responses are variable, as illustrated by the fact that we do not always interpret a tune or tunes the same way each time we use it. Our performance may depend on a particular mood that we are in at the time. You know that yourself. We are able to change the tempo of a tune, and in that way we can exhibit a different emotion with the same piece of music. Now, in practicing a particular piece of music, we may make mistakes. We all do. But these mistakes can be corrected so that the final performance can be without error. And here we have demonstrated the fact that responses are modifiable. Variability and modifiability characterizes very well the process of learning. You know, if you experiment with a tune, you find a piece of choreography that works much better, one that doesn't work better. In that process, we find greater skills within our own performance. As for delayability, we are able to restrain our impulses to play or use a particular tune until the appropriate time is needed for its expression. And surely, you would not use your best patter record or singing call the very first tip. Finally, the musical stimuli for the culture nature, and this one is a toughie. Not all people are affected the same way by the same tune. I'm sure you see this. However, these responses are shared by everyone on the floor at the same time. Some of us are pleased when we listen to a certain tune. Others are bored and displeased. Why? Well, the answer probably lies in the fact that the same musical stimuli function differently for separate groups of us. This function will depend on a previous contact that we've had with them, or whether we've had any contact at all with a certain type of music. Let's face it, some of us like country music, others like pop or semi-pop and classical. And how about jazz or opera? It might be wise to know something of the area or countryside that you are calling in before you plan your program. I've run into this many times. You kind of get zeroed in your home area, and you begin to do a lot of things that the people in the home area like because you've influenced it. And these will not be successful things when you travel 100, 200,000 miles away. Musical stimuli have brought a wide variety of feelings and responses. For example, there's pleasant, unpleasant, excited, relaxed, happy, and sad. All these things we have talked about to this point are hidden within your record case. And I say hidden because you may not even know that they are there. You know, we all listen to music in our own way. And for lack of better terminology, one might name these in 3 different planes of listening. The one most common is the sensuous plane. The second is the expressive plane. And the third is the sheerly musical plane. Now, the only advantage I see to be gained from mechanically splitting up these listening processes into their own hypothetical planes is a clearer view to be had of which way we as an individual listen. The sensuous plane is the simplest way of listening to music, which is the sheer pleasure of a musical sound itself. You know, if you like a particular tune, you probably analyze it in the first few notes. In this plane on which we hear music without thinking and without considering it in any way. For example, you know how many times you're driving down the highway. You might be in a car full of people, the radio's playing low, and your attention really is on the conversation, and all of a sudden one note is struck on an instrument, such as a guitar. And immediately, the whole atmosphere is changed within the car or room, wherever you might be listening. And you know, really, the surprising thing is that many people who consider themselves qualified music lovers have used this plane of listening probably most of all. The sensuous plane is an important one in music, a very important one, and particularly in our business. But it does not constitute the whole story. On the expressive plane, my own belief is that all music has an expressive power, some more, some less, but that all music has a certain meaning behind the notes, and that meaning behind the notes constitutes, after all, the piece, what the piece is saying, and what the piece is all about. So, what I'm trying to get through to you, a record is a record. Don't buy it because you heard someone else use it and you think, that's it. Give it a little more concentration. After all, you listen to a certain piece of music, and somehow you relate to it. You may relate to it in material things. It might remind you of a train, a storm, a funeral, or any other familiar conceptions of what would pass through your brain at that particular time. If you learn to use all these expressive notes within the composition itself, think of what can be created in a dance by just adding enough choreography to make it interesting. You know, music can express it at many different moments. Serenity, exuberance, regret, triumph, fury, or delight. Think about that. Apply it. It may even express a state of meaning for which there exists no adequate word in any language. And then we go to plane number 3, which is surely the musical plane, and I must say that I'm not well versed on this. To me, this is the individual who has studied music, who knows music, scores music, and very obviously reads music. And I think Roy Clark once said, well, he could read music, but not enough to hurt anything. And I think most of us probably fit into that category. Let's face it, most listeners, which are callers and dancers, are not sufficiently conscious of this third plane. They relate mostly to the first two, which is the first two we mentioned. Let's consider that we are dealing mainly with the man on the street, so to speak. When he listens to notes themselves with any degree of concentration, he will most likely make some mention of the melody. Either he or she hears a pretty melody, and he or she does not, and he or she generally lets it go at that, without any second thought. And let's face it, in our business, rhythm is likely to gain the attention of most dancers, particularly if it seems exciting, if they are consciously even thought of at all. Now, let's step back for a moment and say we go to a square dance, and you're aware of the caller and the dancers and the hall and the costumes and maybe the atmosphere and the scent in the air and whatever. The music goes on, and all this gives us one sense, and that is that the dance is a pleasant place to be. And what would the dance be without it? This really constitutes the sensuous plane. The expressive plane will be gathered up in the fact that you are affected by the music. What the caller does choreographic-wise is in connection with the music and your own personal response to that. For example, a professional caller, however, meaning that any caller attending a dance and dancing for the evening, he may look at things a little more critically above and beyond the fact of sheer enjoyment. I know how many times I've been accused of going to a dance and people say, John, you're not having a good time. I'm having a wonderful time, but you're not smiling. And I said, well, not smile isn't really a part of it, but maybe it is. But I'm so concentrating on what is going on. This is where I apply that sheer musical plane right there because I'm so interested in it. I feel that if you try and maintain a certain degree of level on all three of these planes, you are in a better position to understand what you are doing psychologically with music. And that any combination of choreography and at the end result will be a more enjoyable program to all, yourself included. Maybe in simpler words, be a caller, but first be what you were in the beginning, and that's a dancer. If you can think like a dancer, react like a dancer, then you can make a dancer happy by your calling. And maybe again, in other words, to be better use of psychology of music, of choreography, and all these other elements we've talked about. You must be sensitive enough in your own mind, in your own body, to relate to these things, so that you, in turn, can be a disciple of these things and pass them on to other individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. If, as we're moving along here, if you have any questions on any of the things we're using, don't hesitate to ask. And we do suggest that you use the mic and speak very clearly. Don't be afraid to walk up to it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, because that's what we're here for. We'll go ahead and continue with our program, and then at the end we'll kind of show you some of the things that might be interesting in the use of music with records and that type of thing. Okay, Carl, would you like to give her a whirl here one time?
Thank you, Curley. You know, as I began to prepare for this presentation, my thoughts were influenced by a lesson that I was taught several years ago. In my position at Oklahoma State University, working with school administrators, we oftentimes have the opportunity to be invited to various schools throughout our state, as well as other states, as we address banquets, honor and award banquets, graduations, commencements, and that sort of thing. Good, we're just about ready. And it was at one of these banquets that I learned a lesson that Curley is just about to throw the switch on our overhead to show you what the lesson that I learned at that particular time. As it so happens, I was seated, and the MC was making the introductions. And my wife, lovely Martha, seated right back there, jotted a note to me and slid it over just before I was to be introduced to make some comments at this particular awards banquet. And I thought, how sweet of her to write me that note. We obviously could not embrace in front of a room filled with people on the dais at a banquet. And I thought, how diabolically clever of her to send me a kiss by way of a note, KISS. When the presentation was over and we were on our way back to home, I told her that I thought it was very thoughtful of her to do that. And I said, I really appreciate the kiss you sent me, KISS. And she said, I'm sorry, sweetheart. That doesn't stand for kiss. It stands for keep it simple, stupid. So that was the guiding thought that crossed my mind as I prepared to develop my comments for this particular meeting for today. The presentation that I'm going to make on music is aimed for the non-musician, the layman, the person who is not schooled in music. I don't know the secret of success. I do know the secret of failure, however. And I believe that secret of failure is to try to be all things to all people. I know that among you there are people who are schooled in music. I know there are musicians among you. I know there are those who are not schooled and who are non-musicians. So these thoughts, as I have said, my presentation, as I have said, will be aimed for you folks who are non-musicians. That's the parameters we're working. I'm attempting to heed the KISS theory and to avoid the certain failure, and that is to try to be all things to all people. I make these statements up front to establish the guidelines around which the presentation is going to be made. We don't want to talk down to anyone. We certainly don't want to try to dazzle anyone with brilliance or appear to do that. So it's going to be aimed at that particular group. For those of you who are schooled in music, who are musicians, perhaps this will serve as a little review for you as well. You know, as I worked on this, can I have the next one, please, Curly? As I worked on this, I was careful not when we make assumptions, we have to be very careful. The word assume can do this to you and me. It can make an ass of you and me if you break that word down, A-S-S-U-M-E, all right? So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be very careful as we approach this, so I made no assumptions. Now, during the presentation, I'm going to be using some records. These records are going to be an attempt to demonstrate certain elements of music. We're going to demonstrate certain points or certain concepts of music, and it should in no way be considered as or construed or assumed to be an indictment or an endorsement of the records that we are going to be using for examples. These records are from my record case. I use them at dances, and I'd like to think that I use good stuff. So don't think that they're necessarily bad. You know, to talk about music, Johnny has hit on a pretty deep area, the psychology of music. I'd like to pull us back just a little bit to the very beginning. Let's consider, if you will, please, what is music? All music is based on sound, all right? What is sound? Sound is a form of vibration. Something has to vibrate before we can have sound. As you speak, air is forced across your vocal cords. Your vocal cords vibrate. You have sound. That sound can be adjusted in terms of high pitches and low pitches by a tightening or a relaxing of the muscles. That's how we get our changes in pitches. If you're talking about a woodwind instrument, you're talking about air passing across a reed. The reed vibrates. Sound is created. A brass instrument, you form the embouchure with the lips, you pass air across the lips vibrate, the instrument amplifies the sound, voila, you have a brass sound. So we're talking basically vibrations. That's what we're talking about. For example, if you go into an orchestra concert, one of the first things you see after all of the musicians get seated, you'll see the concert master come out and take his seat. Then the double reed player, an oboe, will put the instrument to his mouth or her mouth and strike a musical note. That note happens to be an A with 440 vibrations per second. Why an A? Because that is what an orchestra tunes to. Every instrument in that orchestra is tuning to the same note. The vibrations, 440 vibrations per second. When all instruments are in tune, are all at this very same pitch, the orchestra is in tune. At that time, the conductor comes out and the concert begins. Now, if you will listen carefully as the orchestra is tuning, you will hear the same pitch, the A440, 440 vibrations per second. You will also hear a difference in sound because you have cellos, which are different sounding from violins. You have trumpets, which are different sounding than trombones. Yet they are all sounding the same pitch, A440. Why then the difference? It's called timbre. Each of us has a different kind of timbre of our voice. Some of our voices are raspy, some are naturally deep, some are piercing and strong. That's the timbre of our voice. It all goes together to form this thing called music and sound, all right? I'm sure that Professor Hopkins will go in much deeper into that sort of thing tomorrow, so we will bounce off of that very quickly. I think we would be probably amiss if we did not consider just for a moment the importance of music to the total dance program. I don't know what percent of the total dance program is music. I don't know. I do know this. I do know that when you play a hoedown, you play a hoedown for the patter call, you play a singing call, both of those are music. All right? That makes the tip. I do know that music alone, in, of, and by, and for itself, will not make a complete dance program. Just assuredly, I know also that choreography alone will not make a good, successful dance program. Music, in my opinion, serves as the communication link between the caller, cuer, and the dancer. Music is that communication line, that thing that comes from you to the dancer, which creates the psychology that you want created, that Johnny talked about. Okay? That's your link. That's the communication device. Let's get on and look at it just a little closer. It's difficult to separate the various aspects or elements of music because in many cases one aspect or element is contingent upon other elements or aspects of music. For example, in just a moment I'm going to go over to this instrument that you see over here to my left, your right. I'm going to strike a note, then I'm going to ask a question. Now, I'm going to be using this a couple of times during this afternoon. I want you to know that I am not a keyboard instrumentalist, okay? So if my finger slips off the correct key, you will forgive me, I hope. Right? Right. Are you out there? Hello, testing one. Yeah, okay. Okay. A musical note, an E natural for those of you who are skilled in music. That's the first line of the treble clef. Is that a melody note? Is that a harmony note? We don't know. We don't know because we don't have enough pieces of the puzzle. That one particular sound did not tell us much. It just told us that it was organized. It had a specific number of vibrations. It was a musical tone. When I give you more pieces to the puzzle, we'll be able to identify what it is, okay? I'll strike the note again, and then I'll create the rest of it, and then we'll be able to tell what it is, okay? In that example, it happened to be a part of a musical chord, which is part of the harmonic structure, okay? If we would put some movement to that one note, it could become melodic. The only thing that changed was we gave, to make it move, we gave motion and music and motion to it, movement and motion to it, and we made that one note then turn into by adding two others, a melodic line. Okay, if you will take the next one, please, Curly. What we're going to do is look very, very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, at about 6 concepts, 6 elements of music. We're going to go through them as if you are not schooled musicians, as if you don't know anything about music. We've heard these terms before. We're going to talk just a little bit about melody. We're going to talk just a little bit about harmony. We're going to talk just a little bit about rhythm, about phrase, tempo, and meter. It is not our intent to make musicians of any of you. It's not our intent to bore you musicians with information that you already have. If you already have this information, please consider it kind of a review. If you don't have the information, perhaps it will be helpful to you. Can we have the next one, please, Curly? Here, ladies and gentlemen, is a definition of melody. Now, all of these definitions are taken from the Dictionary of Music by Willie Apple, if you want to check the source. The Dictionary of Music by Willie Apple. I have taken the liberty of paraphrasing what Professor Apple has done. You'll notice that melody is defined as a succession of musical tones which represents the horizontal element of music. Yes, the horizontal element of music. In just a moment, I'm going to approach the keyboard and play a very simple nursery rhyme that I hope you will be able to identify, called Mary Had a Little Lamb. No rhythm to it. There's no rhythmic background. There's no harmonic structure. Just a simple melody, the horizontal aspect of music, if you will. No fancy stuff, no chords, no meter problem, just the horizontal element of music. That's the melody side. That's the melody side. Okay. If you have trouble with melody, if you happen to be one of those who needs a strong melodic line to help you with your program, one of the best things you can probably do in your record selection, in addition to considering those things that Johnny was talking about, when you want to raise the crowd, when you want to drop the crowd, when you want to calm them down, is if you have a difficult time following the melodic line, then you better get something with a pretty strong melody assistance. I'm going to play an example of something that has a record that has some assistance with the melodic line. Then I'll follow it with one that is practically non-existent in terms of a melodic line. See if we can identify the difference. 2 different songs, of course. The introduction first. Trombone will have the melody when it comes in. Hear that trombone? Bum, 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 bum. The melody is there. You don't have to search for it. You also have a flute playing around on a counter melody above. But the melody is there. You don't have to look for it. Let's compare that with a tune. This happens to be another singing call that has a distinct absence of melodic line. You'll hear rhythm. It's a good solid danceable record. As I say, I use it, but there's an absence of the melodic line. Good rhythm, you feel the beat, but no melody. If you have a difficult time finding the melodic line, a record like that will drive you bananas. You have a couple of choices. If you don't know the tune, you've got to turn it over and trust that the presenter on the other side is pretty accurate in his melodic guidance, and copy that, okay? So there's something about melody. Let's move to the next slide, please. Let's consider the concept of harmony, if you will. You can see that Willie Apple, from the Dictionary of Music, has defined harmony as two or more musical tones being played or sung at the same time, which produces a pleasant musical sound. The notes are usually members of a chord structure, and it represents the vertical, the up and down aspect of music. Okay? Let's take a look, for example, at a musical chord. I'm going to start with that same musical note that we used a moment ago, and I'm going to build a chord on it. Okay? And we'll get the vertical aspect of music. We had 5 musical tones sounding at the same time in a vertical way, one stacked on the other, producing a pleasant sound, as defined by Willie Apple. That is harmony. That happened to be a C chord, a C, an E, and a G. For those of you who are interested, for those of you who aren't interested, maybe that will fill it in. Let's create our own chord. I'll tell you what, we're a little sparse. Ruthie, would you raise your hand, please? Okay. See where Ruthie is in this section over to your left, toward the doors. You're going to be the third note that I'll play. The group from Ruthie's going to her right, my left, to the aisle will be the second group. The first group will be everybody in this section right here. We're going to create that same chord. We're going to do harmony right here, live and in color, right here in Kansas City at the CALLERLAB Convention. Okay? You all ready? Eat your heart out, Fred Waring. Oh, he doesn't know it. He's in a heap of trouble. Okay. We can also use that harmonic structure, folks. We can use that harmonic structure to take care of tunes, musical sounds that are a bit out of our range. Look, you have your music sounding in a vertical fashion, up and down, whereas the melodic line is a horizontal movement. You have to be right on pitch, on the exact pitch, to be in tune if you're singing melody. If you use the harmonic structure of a tune, of a song, you can hit any one of those 5 notes that I played in that C chord and be musically correct. I'm going to play for you in just a moment an example of one of our real good CALLERLAB members, a fine recording artist, using a harmonic, because the range of the song was just a tad too high, and he selected to go to the harmonic, still musically correct. Okay? I think you'll know the tune. It's called West Virginia. I think it will be probably familiar to most of you. Here it is. Raise your hand when he hits the harmonic. He's right on the melody right now. Yeah. I didn't see all the hands go up, therefore some of us must have missed it. Hello, would you do me a favor, please? Take your arm and nudge the person next to you, make sure we're all together. Are you all here? Hello, 1, 2. Yeah, okay. I think we're here. Let me do it one more time. It's as he hits the note West Virginia. It's pretty high, okay? He doesn't want to take a chance. He elects to go to the harmonic. You're expecting the high note. He comes in below the pitch, but in the harmonic. That's what we're talking about, using the harmonic structure to assist you, okay? Let me play it one more time. This time raise your hand when you hear it. I'll raise my hand when I hear it, and if we all do it at the same time, it's going to be neat, okay? Sing it, Don. Here we come. All right. You didn't know how to play the game first time through. I understand. Okay, I'll get with you in just a few minutes. Okay, you can use the harmonic structure of music to assist you if it's out of your range. I'll show you something else in just a moment when we get to tempo you can do that may destroy you too. Okay? Let's move on to the next one, Curly. I believe it's rhythm. Son of a gun. He put them in the right order. Okay. Willie Apple defines rhythm in the Dictionary of Music as everything pertaining to the duration aspect of musical sound. Folks, rhythm is the thing that causes motion and movement to music, causes music to have motion and movement. I'll tell you what. I'm going to count off to 4. I'll tap my foot. Then I'd all like for us to start clapping on the beat of the music. If there'll be no music, it's going through our mind. Ready? Here's the tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, and clap. 2, 3, yeah. 2, 3, good, yeah. Okay, I'm going to give some rhythm to that. Keep going. Go, go, go. Yeah, yeah. Pass the plate. I think they're ready. It gives the movement and the music. What you were doing was providing the beat. Okay? I came in on the afterbeat to cause it to move just a little bit more. Okay? That's called the movement or the motion of music. One of the best things that I, well, not one of the best, an example I came up with is a hoedown called Hot Breaks. It's going to start off with the downbeat. 8 beats into the record, you will hear very subliminally a snare drum provide the afterbeat, okay? And it will build until you have the rhythm section. The rhythm section, that's all you're going to have on this thing. Rhythm section being bass, drums, and guitar, okay? There's the beat. Bass. More than 8 beats, I lied to you. Here comes the drum. Hear it? Feel it move? That's rhythm. And it goes on and on and on. Okay, is that kind of an example of what rhythm is? It's hard to define rhythm and talk about rhythm without examples, without really experiencing. Technically, it's everything that pertains to the duration aspect of musical sound, that which moves it. Not speed, but that which moves the musical sound. Not the rate of speed, but it just has to move. Okay, let's take a look at the next one, please, Curly. We're looking at tempo. Tempo, very simply, is no more or no less than this: the rate of speed of music. In just a moment, I'm going to walk back over here to this keyboard instrument. I'm going to play Mary Had a Little Lamb one more time. I'm going to change the tempo. I will increase, speed it up. Then I'm going to come back and ask a couple of questions, okay? That's what's going to happen. Now we're going to increase the tempo. We're not going to change key signatures. We're not going to change anything except tempo, speed. That's all the change. The sound, the pitch, the key signature, the time signature, everything, musically speaking, would have been the same. Now, what happens if we take a piece of music? Let's go back to one of these. America. We're going to adjust the speed. Just a moment. Let me increase the speed. What happened in addition to the tune getting faster? Did you hear any other changes that took place? The sound seemed to raise, didn't it? It didn't seem to, it did. Why didn't the pitches get higher when I increased the speed on this keyboard instrument? The reason, the answer is one is the speed of the record, the other one is the speed of the what? Right. Tempo has nothing to do with the pitch of a music until you put it on a variable speed turntable. As you make those revolutions more, increase the revolutions, it's going to increase the tempo, but it's also going to raise the pitch because it's turning faster. There are many callers that will maybe are having just a tad bit of difficulty reaching a high note. We sometimes will suggest decrease the speed just a tad, whatever a tad is. We use that a lot in Oklahoma. I haven't figured it out what it is yet. We use it a lot. Decrease the speed just a tad. If you decrease it too much, you're going to get to the point where your tempo is not comfortable to dance with, okay? So you've got to be careful about playing with the speed on the variable speed turntable. But from a musical standpoint, tempo is one thing and one thing only, the rate of speed of music, and that's all. Okay? Let's go to the next overhead, please, Curley. A couple of aspects of music that sometimes are difficult to understand. Phrase. Phrasing of music is a natural division of the melodic line. It's comparable to a sentence of speech. You know, we form our speech in groups of words called sentences. We also have other assistants that we have in our speech patterns. We have commas. We have periods at the end of a thought. We have question marks. We have exclamation points that we use. Music is the same way. The key word here is that it is a natural duration. It's a natural division of the melodic line. Okay. All of our music, no. Most of the music that we work with in the calling area is in 2/4 time or 4/4 time. Now, I guess I could show you what that looks like on an overhead, but maybe we don't care what it looks like. Just be aware of the fact that it is that way. And when musicians look at it, they're saying 2/4 time or 4/4 time. What this means is that each measure of music in 2/4 time gets only 2 beats, while in 4/4 time, each measure of music will receive 4 beats. In a musical phrase. Okay, normally. And we're going to play a couple of examples here in just a moment. But we're talking about a natural division. As kids, let me give you an example. I don't play the organ very well, and I sing even worse. So I'm going to give you a singing example just to share my total lack of talent with you, okay? As kids, we sang a song called 3 Cheers for the Red, White, and Blue. Let me do that. It's an O Sousa march. You'll recognize it, perhaps. Let me do a little bit of that, and I'll stop before we get to the end of a musical phrase. It will be an unnatural ending. You'll want it to go on. And this is what happens when you get out of phrase with the music. Your dancers want it to come to a natural end, and it doesn't. Here's how it sounds. 3 cheers for the red, white, and blue. You know we all love you. You may think that this is the end. Well, it is. You wanted to go, bom, bom, bom. You wanted that, didn't you? We didn't end with a natural phrase right there, and that's what happens when you're out of phrase with music. Okay, let's take a look at the next one, Curly, please. The next one happens to deal with meter. Meter, simply stated, is the basic scheme of note values. You know that 2/4 and 4/4 time that I was telling you about that musicians see? That's very important for them. The thing that's important for you is that you don't shortchange the note. We're all familiar with the tune called Take Me Out to the Ball Game, right? In just a moment, I'm going to do a little bit of that in meter, and then I'm going to give the first note just 1 beat instead of the 3 beats that it's supposed to have and get it out of meter, okay? The tune goes something like this. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd, right? Now, let's get it out of meter. We'll give that first beat, we're in 3/4 time, right? We'll give that first beat just a tad, not enough time. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd by me. Okay. Well, I know all the good ones were in Kansas City at the CALLERLAB, so that's good. Okay. Johnny said it sounded like a caller he danced to last night. Okay, did you see the importance of metering? Meter is where you ignore the basic scheme of note values. Now, the fact that a note is supposed to get 3 beats, and you're a non-musician, and you don't care if it's supposed to get 3 beats or 2 beats, why should you be a little concerned? Because you can get out of meter very, very quickly, friend, and when you get out of meter, it sounds kind of like that. Something's wrong. It's not fitting. Were we in tune? More or less, yes. Were we in meter? Were we in phrase? Yeah, we had a musical phrase, a natural end. Was the tempo correct? Yeah, the tempo was just about right with both examples. What was wrong? We were out of meter. And that's what can happen when you get out of meter with the music aspect, okay? Do you have any questions? Curly, I think we must have done it well. I see no questions coming from the audience. Curly, I think, has got some things that he wants to share with you. Do what, sir? Yeah, so you just turn it off there. Thank you for your time and indulgence.
You surely must have some questions on what this man had to offer. Yes, go ahead, George.
Carl, one of the phrases we hear often is word metering, and, of course, we're talking about musical metering. I'm not sure it's kind of where this is appropriate. Could you perhaps distinguish between the two, or is there a distinction between the two? Or?
Yes, I will. As I understand the question, you want to know the difference between metering in terms of calling and metering in terms of music. Okay, we're talking about word metering and music metering. Okay, let me attempt to answer that. I'm not sure that I can, but I'll give you an Andersonism, which should not be confused with a truism, okay? When you're dealing with timing and phrasing with dancing, you've got at least 3 different times that you've got to work with. You've got the number of beats, or the time that it takes to execute a movement. This is called timing in dancing, right? Dick Ledger sitting back there has worked a great deal on this, okay? You have dancer lead time. You have our execution time. You have dancer execution time. From the time you give the command, they have to have time to respond. What do we mean by that? Everybody clap your hands. How come you didn't all clap together? Okay? That's what we mean about lead time, see? You got to give them enough time, or execution time. You got to give them enough time to execute. And then you have the timing with the music. Put them all together, and they mesh together. Remember I said in the early comments that it's difficult to separate one aspect of music from other elements because they are so totally related. The relationship between phrasing and metering and timing is there. Let's take, for example, you're in 2/4 time or 4/4 time, okay? The downbeat of that first measure is the strong one. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where you want the accent, right there on that beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you come in with your accent on the second beat, there's where you're going to run into trouble with timing and with phrasing and with metering. They are all interrelated, one with the other. I'm not sure I have answered your question. Maybe I've talked around it. But there is a relationship that one must work with a great deal. To understand music will help. To understand the timing of the dance patterns will help. Put them together, you got it. Okay?
Carl, I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to discuss something about the terminology used when you're working with a band, bars of music, such as a 4-bar introduction versus a 2-bar and so forth. Would you elaborate on that a little bit? And
yes,
also, sir? I'd like to, if you would throw out a pitch about callers, particularly working in singing calls, of how to learn harmony.
Okay, I'll try. Curly, could I ask you to... Okay. When we're speaking of bars of music, we're speaking of ways that music is divided. What you see on the overhead before you now is a musical staff with a treble clef, with the time signature 2/4, a 2 over a 4. What this means is that each measure is going to receive 2 beats. What is a measure? See those vertical lines separating each one of those, so I say 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. Do you see those up there? Okay. Each of those vertical lines is separating, or creating, is a bar line, which creates a measure. Okay? What we have there is the total phrase of music in 2/4 time. I've written it like this to show you how the music phrases in 8 or 16 beats. In this case, 8 measures. I'm going to put on a hoedown in 2/4 time. Now, the reason I have them written 1-2 is because we're getting 2 beats to the measure. Each measure is going to be numbered as well. So we have a 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, etc. schema. Do you see how that's written up there? Let me put the hoedown on, and we'll see if we can feel that natural division that I tried to explain. Count with me if you will. And at the end of the 8-2, you should feel this natural division because that's where the phrase ends. We're having the introduction at the first, and we'll get to introductions in just a moment. I'll learn how to work that thing. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 2, 8, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 2, 8, break. 1, 2, 2. See how the natural break comes? Or the natural division comes at the end of the 8th measure, 16th beat. Okay? Now, let's look at an interesting phenomenon. I don't know if it's interesting or not. It is to me. Let's put the other slide on, and I'll put a hoedown on in 4/4 time. Again, let's listen just for a minute. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, break. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, break. You feel the natural division coming there. Here we're taking up only 4 measures. But there are 16 beats still, because there are 4 beats to each measure. 4 times 4 being 16. Now let's look at the introduction that we're talking about. The question was asked about introduction. Question, how can I tell the difference between 2/4 time and 4/4 time, and is it important for me to know? I can't answer whether it's important for you to know or not. It is for me. I have a very difficult time working with 2/4 music. I do it, but I have to make myself listen, and I have to work more on my timing. Maybe Dick could explain the psychological aspect that it's having on me. I don't know, but I have more difficulty working with 2/4 than I do 4/4. The way you can tell the difference between the two is, again, you're listening for this natural division, and you almost have to count it if you can't feel it. Let's listen to the 4/4 again. This is 4/4. Now, did you feel a natural break there? Here it comes. Dum, bum, bum, break. That's 4/4. Let's see if we can feel it in 2/4. Could you feel the natural break? Okay. Okay, now let's think about what's happening. Let's think about what is happening. We have the heavy accent on the first beat of the measure. If you're in 4/4 time and you're going to have 16 beats, we're talking, 4 measures. You should have 4 very strong beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. You'll have 4 of those. If you're in 2/4 time, the strong beat will be on the first, or the downbeat, the first beat, but we're talking about 2 beats to a measure. Now you're talking about how many measures? You're talking 8. Now how many strong accented beats will you have? 8. So you have twice as many of those pulsating, driving beats, the accented beats in 2/4 time as opposed to 4 in 4/4 time. Okay? So let's get back to the introduction. Someone asked about how do you know when the introduction ceases and you're ready to start for real? The hoedown, liquid gold. 2, 3, 4. Here it comes now. Go. 1. 2 measure introduction, 8 beats. Did you feel it? Hello, testing. Okay. Let's try it again. You just got to feel it. 8 beats on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go. 1. Feel it? Let's try it on the 2/4. We don't have much of an introduction there, as a matter of fact. It comes right in. It's just the pickup notes, okay? One more time. Did it slip up on you? Let's try it again. Got it? Seems to be no consistent pattern. In several of the demonstrations that I've used, there is at least 2 hoedown records out that there's no introduction at all. It just bang and it's there. There are some that have 8 beats. There are some that have 4 beats. There are some that have 2 pickup notes, 2 beats, if you will, and you're there. There's no consistent pattern about the number of beats in an introduction. You just have to listen, feel it, and be ready to go, okay? Okay, the question is, there are various number of beats in an introduction. Is there an ideal number of beats in an introduction? I would answer that question, no, because it depends a lot on this thing that Johnny was talking about earlier. What kind of an effect are you trying to create? With something like Liquid Gold, which has an 8-beat introduction, it's a lot depends, too, on the instrumentation of the record, what you want to do with it. Is it a workshop? Do you want to calm the floor down? Do you want to excite? You can also change the sound by working with your equipment. Less bass, more treble will give a completely different psychological feel to the floor. In terms of ideal time, number of beats for an introduction, no, there are not. I personally like the 8-beat introduction. It gives the dancers a time to hear the music. It gives you time to adjust and get ready to go. It doesn't slip up and jump on you all of a sudden, okay? Now, that's an Andersonism, okay? That's a personal preference. Yes, sir.
Does it follow through then? A 6/8 rhythm, or would have 6 notes per measure? Okay.
Yes,
can we get into a 2-step or in round dancing, or in ballroom dancing? Why is it one orchestra is easy to dance to? Is it just their timing, and some you can't? There's something wrong. You don't know what's wrong, but what's the cause of it?
You come from North Dakota, right? Where Mr. Lawrence Welk himself, wonderful, Totowa tapping a tune. All right. The question is, 6/8 time. What does it look like? It would be like a 6. It would be like a 6 over an 8, which indicates there are 6 beats to a measure. An 8th note receives a beat. However, the feel for this typically is 2 beats per measure grouped in notes of 3, and it gives a triplet type of sound. La ta 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 1 2 la ta 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 ya ta 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 ta. That would be a 6/8 type thing. Johnny, do you have some 6/8 stuff with you? Okay. In terms of what is the difference between the feel in ballroom dancing from one band or orchestra to another? I can only relate to my personal experience when I used to have a dance band right here in the city. One of the best things that you can have is a good rhythm section. Remember, the rhythm section that gives you that movement and motion involves a bass, drums, okay, and a guitar. Piano sometimes, if they're playing chords and giving the offbeats. So if you got that, you should have a good rhythm section, and it should feel comfortable whether you're dancing a waltz, a tango, or whatever. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, start with the mic if you would, please, sir. I would like to ask how you develop good phrasing in your calling. I mean, other than the fact that just recognizing it and then practicing like the devil, I suppose, but do you have any other suggestions in good phrasing in your calling?
The question is, how do you work on phrasing and meeting with the music? And you came up with the answer right there. First of all, recognizing it, and secondly, practicing. I don't mean to be flippant, but those are the 2 best ways that I know of. First of all, if you do not recognize the natural break, the natural division, there's your first problem. If you have that problem, there's where you need to begin. From that point on, once you get that feel, once you get that down, then it's just a system of putting your figure, your patter, your fill with the movement of the dancers, the number of counts the movement requires, and staying in phrase and in meter with the music. And it practices is the only way that I know of. Maybe Johnny's been at it a year or two longer than I have. Maybe he has a better answer.
One major example. Do you need an exercise to practice? Is that what you're after? You want an example of how you can hit the phrase correctly?
Well, I was just wondering what suggestions you might have to a caller who might be having a problem with phrasing or doesn't recognize phrasing.
Well, again, maybe you need the example of phrasing and the lead-in to a command. I relate back to contra or to quadrille. It's the fact it's almost establishing a situation here where you give a prompted command just enough ahead of time so the dancer can react and start on the actual downbeat of the first phrase. I see this violated so many times, particularly that could be very effective, like in Grand Square. Would you start that record? Just that ragtime man is just fine. If you're ready, as it goes, you can just sides face, grand square. I was a little bit slow. And try it again. Okay. Sides face, grand square. And I was slow again, but the opening is so fast there. I could probably do it better with the liquid gold number. But the idea is that you cue it ahead enough time that the dancer is reacted and can start right on the first phrase. And, of course, 16 beats over, 16 beats back. And, of course, one thing that we're really not... You can add up a record. You can even do a patter record, for the most part, like you can a singing call. Now, you know, in a singing call, most singing calls have an 8-beat opener, okay? So eliminating that, and you go through the figure one time. That's 64 beats of music. Then you take that times 7. And a lot of your patter records are the same way. So you really, if you want to plan ahead enough in your patter, you can handle a patter record very much like you can a singing call. Yes, sir.
This may not sound just right, but do all people have the same word metering? I have problem metering a lot of the singing calls that are out, and should all people have the same word metering structure within themselves?
Your question is, as I understand it, should each individual have the same word metering in order to come out musically? Yes. If your word metering is off from the music, your meter is going to be off. So the answer to your question is yes, everyone should meter it the same.
Anybody else? Don't be hesitant, because you got all this talent up here. Don't hesitate to ask the question, because now's the time.
Curly, I came in late, and I'm not sure if you made a presentation, but in an effort in the early years to teach people to handle a problem if they couldn't phrase, in an effort to do that, I was seeking some way. And one time when you were calling at my place in Massachusetts, I was in the house, and Mito said to me, "Hey, listen to Curly. We couldn't hear your music. We could only hear your voice, because it was in the hall and sound was coming out."
Yeah.
And from listening to you and the example that you set, I found a way to teach callers to call perfect phrasing if that's what they wanted to do. And in most of our timing we can, but in much of it we can, of course, in today's choreography. And I didn't hear if you gave a presentation, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't know anyone else in calling today that has the phrasing and the ability to divide his music and to develop this as Curly. And I think maybe you'd all better hear that, because it's almost like he is the underlying beats that we've been talking about here. I don't know, Curly, if you have already I can't.
Well, thank you, Lori. I guess I lean heavily toward tempo, first of all, because in my particular feeling about calling and in relating my feeling about rhythm and music to my floor that I'm dancing, I like to have not more than 128 beats a minute. Now, if everybody knows how to set tempo, some people like to do it 130. I've heard people call 132 or higher. But as you get higher, you lose the natural body rhythm Now, there is a body rhythm. I've been trying to track this down for years. What is a basic body rhythm? Does anybody really know? But the only thing that I can come up with is there is a dance rhythm that seems to be more prevalent, that people will dance longer and enjoy dancing more if it is under 130. Now, this is my particular presentation because I like to dance at a cool 128 singing call or patter call. Now, I can incite dancers with voice and music by bringing it up or down, you know. But to really get them digging, I use a 128 tempo. And it's an offbeat style calling. And I try to select music that's heavy with the first beat. The second beat is real clean. And if your instrument your lead instrument is real clear also, you're going to have a good piece of music. And I think probably one of the first tools when you're calling is your music selection. And if you'll, just like the record he just put on right there, that's Ragtime Annie, when you put on a good record, you know you're going to have a start when you look at the floor and look how many feet go. And that'll tell you so quickly if the record's good or not. And let me have this once again. Now, I'll set my tempo where I play it, you know. It won't be there. Now, this is a tempo I call too, and I keep it at that all the way through. But if you'll notice on this particular record, notice the heavy first beat. That first beat is real heavy. It is also like a bass fiddle thumb. You'll hear the thumb or the rhythm. You don't hear a thud. You'll find records that the bass beat sounds like a thud, and you don't really have the real solid dance beat to go to. It just isn't there. The thud is just a thud as it is. But then going back, then I reach back and see where the high beat or the off beat, the pickup beat is. Notice it coming in here. If you got a good heavy beat and the second beat's a good solid, your drum snare is good solid second beat, your record is usually a good record if the lead instrument is clean. They give you the first thing to go on. But first of all, look out across the floor. Their feet are going. You don't have to start because it's already there. So this is my first start when I go to call a dance or music selection, and then I patter along with this offbeat so that the whole flow is a continuous rock all the way through constantly. Did I say what you meant, Gloria? Or I guess we could do it. Why don't I get a square? Let me have a square down here once, please. Yeah. Okay, I'll have to use this particular mic because we're tied into the system here. And we'll just give you a short start on how we do it, okay? You all look so good out there. Well, bound to the partner way down low, round the corner do it, oh, son, oh. Come back and see and saw the pretty little tall door left dollar man. Come right back around the left friend. Grandma and let you go to meet your girlie down by the gate. Take her by the hand and promenade. Promenade home to go to get on the back like a big daddy-o. Well then, that's all. We thank you very much. Anybody else have a question? Don't be bashful, kids. Speak up.
Yes. Would any one of the three of you like to comment on and possibly demonstrate the use of syncopation?
I don't have a syncopated record with me. Syncopation is, let me give you a loose definition of it. It is a series of off-beat pulsations, okay? I'll tell you a couple that you might want to listen to. One of the best record sellers in the country, Rockin' and Rosalie's Boat, has a syncopated upbeat going into the song. And I heard so many people not use the syncopation and throw themselves off of the metering because of it. There's another one that is out, Disco Fever. Just before you get to the left allemande in the opener, you have to have 1.5 beats. 1, 2, left allemande. You come on the allemande the left allemande on the upbeat. It is usually, music is divided into parts of beats, okay? If you have a downbeat, obviously you have to have an upbeat. Each one of those then would be a half beat, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. If you come in on the upbeat, we're talking syncopation, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's syncopation. You further can subdivide that. For example, you can have a beat going 1, 2, 3, 4, put it in triplets or in three notes in one beat. Yat-ta-ta, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That will give you syncopation. Anything where you divide beats gives you syncopation. When you also have syncopation, when you find something coming in not on a beat not normally associated with that. For example, marching. They have a syncopated cadence that you perhaps have heard the military use, where they use the offbeat. For example, it goes something like this. Up, 2, 3, 4. Up, 2, 3, 4. Up, 2, 3, 4. The beat is still there, but they're on the syncopation, and pam, 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 pam. It's on the upbeat, okay? That's the best I can do without a record to have you sound what I'm trying to say, okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Curley. How about putting variety and into your singing calls? We've got a stock melody line in it, and this is really directed to all of you. What can you use to embellish, to change, or how do you go about picking out the other opportunities that the music presents to you?
You're saying, what do we use with a singing call to add variety to the singing call, or to patter, or?
Right, being what I use are syncopated thing, not on the downbeat necessarily, but so they're offbeat. And I also use the harmonics, and those are the two things that I use a great deal. Now, you can use syncopation so long as you're not playing with that downbeat. You don't want those dancers to feel that they're wrong, so you better give them that solid beat. So if you're going to play with it, make sure your dancers have something to carry them. Don't play with your dancers. You can play with it to give variety, but make sure that they have something there to count on, okay? But I use, and this is just me, I use the syncopation and the harmonics when I want to change up.
I find, too, that I myself, and I know several other callers do, you use a different octave range to give a different effect. You may want to go an octave higher or an octave lower, depending. Also, imitation. It's a situation if you really want to sell a number, and I'm assuming you referring directly to singing calls. If it's a popular tune, if it's a Willie Nelson tune, imitate it. If it's a Merle Haggard tune, imitate it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what the people want to hear anyway. That's what they're used to hearing on the radio. Not all the way through, but really give it a signature of some kind.
I'll show you something that... Excuse me. Go ahead, sir. You want...
How can one develop the ability to harmonize?
Sir, it's a matter of training. You just have to train your ear and work with listening to the harmonic structure. Just like knowing the number of beats to give so that your dancers have the correct lead time and execution time, that took practice. Working with music and using the harmonic structure will also take practice and a good ear. You've got to hear it to be able to work with it.
Well, would it be best to try to work with an instrumental then that does not have a strong melody, as opposed to if I hear an instrumental with a strong melody, boy, I'm on that melody.
Right. Okay. You heard the example I played for that did not have a strong melody line with it. Boy, that gives you a lot of freedom. You've got the chord structure. You've got the whole thing to do with as you want. That would be a good one. It's moving on in Ranch House, as a matter of fact. And you could, if you could hear those harmonic changes, those chord structure changes, you've got pretty much free license.
You were speaking a while ago about something you can enliven or brighten. It's a little different. Here's something that I do that I don't really tell everybody I do, really. And there's very few people have noticed that I do it. And, of course, if you use this type of microphone that has the volume control on it, if you've got a good piece of music that has the particular offbeat, I use this to emphasize the offbeat. I'll show you. You have to do it right on the money. You cannot miss it or you'll foul up what you have. But if you've got a good piece of equipment that you can work with, you can use it. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. We've had enjoyed having you. See you. Thank you kindly. Thank you, John.
Thank you for inviting me, Curly.
Thank you, Carl. Good job. Good. Good job. Hey, thank you, Jim. Good job. Thank you, Mel. Ron, how you doing, neighbor?